Today's question is very seasonally appropriate. The question is, if I'm saving for maybe a grandchild or a child's education, should I be using maybe a 529 savings plan or a custodial account? So in addition to other ways to save for future college expenses, two of the most popular are custodial accounts and 529 college savings plans. Custodial accounts have been around for much longer, and they're a good way to put money away for a child or a grandchild and for their benefit down the road. One advantage of custodial accounts is the funds could essentially be used for anything as long as it's for the benefit of that child or that minor. It doesn't necessarily have to be school or higher education types of expenses. You can really use the money for anything. Now, one of the downsides that people often talk about with custodial accounts is when the child becomes the age of majority, which could depend on the state that they live in, whether it's 18 or 21, it automatically becomes their money, right? So if they want to take all the money out and spend it on what they want to spend it on, that's essentially perfectly legal. They can do that. Another disadvantage of custodial accounts is in the federal needs-based financial aid methodology, they will factor a little bit more heavily into that methodology versus a 529 savings plan. Now, then about 20 years or so ago came about 529 college savings plans, and they're a really good way if you definitely want to save for qualified higher education expenses. They're a really good way to do that. You do not get a federal tax deduction for putting money into a 529 college savings plan, but if you use your state's plan, you might be able to get a state tax deduction. So for example, in Connecticut, where we're primarily located, Connecticut does have a state tax deduction for contributions to a 529 plan. Up to $5,000 for a single individual or up to $10,000 for a couple married filing jointly. So there's the advantage of the state tax deduction that you could possibly get for putting money into a plan. You also get tax-deferred growth of the money, right? If the money is growing and kicking off interest and dividends and capital gains and things like that, you're not getting taxed on it. And as long as you use that money at some point for qualified higher education expenses, the earnings on that is tax-free. There are some ways to use the money for private school there are some ways to use the money for private school leading up to college also. There are some limitations on that. Now, in contrast to the custodial accounts, the 529 college savings plans don't escape the federal financial aid methodology at all, but it will factor in a little bit less into that methodology. Some of the downsides of a 529 college savings plan: if you take out the money and you're not using it for qualified higher education expenses, there are some penalties and taxes in that year.